Okay, just managed to get out of the screening for Thor Ragnarok. I almost said Thor the Dark World there. That's a different movie, obviously. I had to go to a later screening than usual because the one I wanted to go to apparently was not eligible for the Movie Pass. Yes, I got a Movie Pass membership. But the one I got to didn't manage to work, so anyway. The movie opens up. Thor is being held in chains in this cage, and he's talking to a skeleton, and you think, like, oh, this is going to be taught in flashback. No, he's actually being held prisoner by Surtur, the Lord of the Fire Giants, and Surtur says that Ragnarok is going to be upon them, that Odin is no longer ruling Asgard, which, if you have seen the end of Thor, the Dark World, yes, that's what happens. Loki captures Odin and imprisons him somewhere, and it uses his illusory powers to impersonate Odin. But Thor seems to actually be hip to this because Thor eventually fights his way out, steals Surtur's crown, returns to Asgard, and immediately confronts Odin/Loki, reveals the deception right away. Thor demands to be taken to Odin. Loki says, okay. Turns out that Odin was being held in a retirement home that had recently been decommissioned and was torn down. And it's like, oh no, where is he? It's at this point that Doctor Strange winds up summoning both Thor and Loki. He basically traps Loki, summons Thor. He turns Mjolnir into an umbrella, which does pay off at a later point. Oh, there's one other thing I want to point out. Just at the beginning of the film, when Thor arrives in Asgard to confront Loki, there's this little playlet going on about how Loki sacrificed himself in Thor the Dark World. The two actors are Sam Neill as Loki, and Thor is Luke Hemsworth, obviously the brother of Chris Hemsworth. And they're, like I said, it's acting out, and the two actors are talking. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I did this, and there was that one time I turned you into a frog. Which, yes, this did actually happen in the comics. There was a storyline where Thor was turned into the Frog of Thunder. Anyway, back to the main movie. At this point, they're summoning a Doctor Strange. You get the Doctor Strange post-credit sequence, which was in the Doctor Strange movie, where they're talking, and basically Doctor Strange says, Odin is in Norway, he doesn't really want to talk to you, he said he kind of wished you'd stay out of this, but Thor is rather insistent. Like I said, Mjolnir got turned into an umbrella, and later, when something happens, Thor strikes the umbrella on the ground and turns it back into Mjolnir, which, if you remember in the early Thor comics, he would transform from Donald Blake into Thor by striking a cane on the ground. It would turn it to Mjolnir. Excuse me. Okay, anyway, Thor and Loki get transported to Norway, and it's there they meet Odin. He's standing on the cliffside, and Odin explains that basically, because Loki stripped him of all his power, he doesn't have much time left, and he's been using what little power he has left to keep Hel, the goddess of death, at bay. And he says there's no choice. Ragnarok has begun. There's nothing we can do about it. And at this point, Odin basically transforms into dust and vanishes. And immediately, Hel shows up on the scene. She crushes Mjolnir. There's actually, I'll get into a little bit of her motivations at some point. Just bear with me. She crushes Mjolnir. Loki, probably thinking somewhat wise, he says, we need to get back to Asgard to regroup. Calls for the Bifrost. And there's something you noticed earlier. Like, Heimdall has basically deserted his post at the Bifrost and was replaced by Scourge, a different character. This pays off at a later point too. Sorry, I'm clearing my throat a bit. But anyway, they get called onto the Bifrost. They're trying to escape, but Hela manages to pursue them through the Bifrost and knocks both of them off the Bifrost, and they vanish. Hela shows up on the other end of the Bifrost kills Volstagg and Fendril of the Warriors 3. She kills Hogan later. She manages to convince Scourge to come to her side and immediately starts laying waste to Asgard. It turns out that Hel's motivation is because she is Thor's older sister. Yes, this is not true to the Norse myth at all, but she's Thor's older sister, and she actually was supposed to be the rightful heir to Odin's throne, and she helped Odin conquer several of the 9 realms, or basically all 9 realms, and she wanted more, and Odin decided not to, and then Odin imprisoned her because she tried to usurp his power. Anyway, Thor winds up on what appears to be a junkyard planet. It is actually the planet of Sakaar, which is run by Voss, a.k.a. the Grandmaster, who says he takes the rejects of the galaxy he doesn't want, and he houses them, and he throws on shows to entertain them with his main champion. I think you know who it is, but I'll get to it at some point. Just a bit here. And basically, Thor arrives, he gets overwhelmed, and it's then that he meets the Valkyrie, who basically kidnaps him and brings him to the Grandmaster. Turns out the Valkyrie was one of many Valkyries. I don't think she's ever given an actual name in this, it's just the Valkyrie. But there were a bunch of Valkyries, and Hela slaughtered all but one, and she sort of chickened out and ran off during Hela's first attack on Asgard. But anyway, Thor is brought before the Grandmaster, who says, in order to gain your freedom, you must defeat my champion in the contest of champions. So, for those of you who might not be aware, yes, there are a lot of storylines that are covered here. We have the Surtur Saga, which is a Thor storyline from the 80s. We have the umpteen Ragnarok Thor stories that have happened throughout the comics. We have Contest of Champions, and of course, if you have seen any of the trailers, you know that the Grandmaster's ultimate champion is Hulk, which is a reference to a storyline called Planet Hulk, where Hulk competes in a gladiatorial combat on Sakaar. It is not run by the Grandmaster, it's actually run by a different character. Anyway, it turns out that Loki has also been there, but he's been there a little longer than Thor because as they were knocked off of the Bifrost, they got kind of split off into different times. Loki had actually been there for like a month, and Thor had just showed up, even though Thor has only been there like 30 minutes. It's like, actually, you've been gone for like a month. And Loki does not really want to help Thor at all. He's like, I'm in good standing here. Let's just, cool things out. Anyway, Thor is taken to these prisons where his hair gets cut by Stan Lee, who's the person who cuts his hair. It's there that he meets Korg and Meek, who are characters from the Planet Hulk storyline. Korg is a race of rock creatures who actually appeared in the first Journey into Mystery Thor adventure, so there's a little bit there too. Anyway, most of the gladiators in the Contest of Champions are fitted with these discs that are basically like stun discs. They have these remotes, and you can charge it, and it'll buzz them and cause them to basically pass out. But as Thor is sent out to take on the Hulk, the two fight. Thor's basically trying to reason with Hulk, but Hulk doesn't really want to have anything to do with it. Though Hulk does eventually kind of come around to recognizing him a little bit. As Hulk begins to gain the upper hand, Thor suddenly accesses the power of the God of Thunder and actually manages to toss Hulk around a little bit. And just as it looks like he might gain the upper hand, the Grandmaster activates the disc and stuns Thor, basically allowing Hulk to win. Though Hulk does recognize Thor and actually asks for Thor to basically become his roommate on Sakaar. So at this point, Hulk and Thor kind of slowly bond. Like, Hulk does not want to go back to Earth. He's actually quite happy. And he actually has a good relationship with the Valkyrie as well. But sort of in the midst of all this, eventually Thor and Hulk come to an understanding, and Thor decides to help break free. or help, decides to break free. Hulk kind of decides to help, though he doesn't actually want. Again, he does not really want to leave. But they get to a Quinjet, the Quinjet that Hulk took off in at the end of Avengers: Age of Ultron. As they get on the Quinjet, it activates a message, and it's a message from Black Widow. And that is enough to cause Hulk to revert to Banner. And it turns out that Banner had been the Hulk for about 2 years going, and he was now like more used to being the Hulk. And he said, if I transform back into the Hulk, I don't know if I can transform back into Banner ever again. And so as they're trying to get reoriented, anyway, Thor and Valkyrie finally come to a meeting of terms, and they basically plot a revolution. They free the slaves, they take off after everyone. They use this to access a better ship. Loki tries to betray them again, shock of shocks. Thor puts a stun disc on Loki, incapacitates him, and then they leave, and they leave via a portal called the Devil's Anus. There's a lot of joking throughout this movie. It's way more humor. I just watched Thor: The Dark World for the first time, and I know a lot of people don't like it. I didn't think it was a terrible movie, but I felt like there were chunks of the film that were just missing at points. This one seems to be a bit more of a free-flowing story, like everything got a bit more connected. Like I said, way more humor in this. Some other quick plot points here. Jane Foster and Thor have broken up. They say Jane dumped him. He says it was mutual. But like I said, Doctor Strange's only in with that little bit, and then he's never really mentioned again. Banner shows up, basically to activate the Quinjet that the Hulk was on. It's Thor is trying to go through. He's like, Thor Odin's son of Odin, god of thunder. Strongest Avenger. And then finally he is point break, and that activates the ship. And basically, Banner has to sit around in Tony Stark's suit because it was still on the ship when he reverts back to from Hulk, and it's like, Tony's prayers are really tight. so Banner's constantly running around like tugging at his pants to adjust himself. Let's see here. Anyway, they get to Asgard. Thor basically goes off to confront Hel. Valkyrie is trying to help some Asgardians escape there. Heimdall, this is where Heimdall shows up. I didn't get back to him. Heimdall basically steals the sword for Bifrost. And he's sort of leading not quite an underground resistance movement, more like an underground escape movement, an underground railroad type thing. And they're trying to get to Bifrost so they can get passage to Earth. However, Hel has put Fenrir on guard duty. Fenrir is her wolf, her giant dire wolf that, basically that's what's going on. Anyway, Thor and Hel fight. Thor once again manages to tap into the power of the god of thunder. Basically, he gets sort of this spirit conversation with Odin, and Odin says, yeah, listen, Mjolnir was not your tool for your power. Mjolnir was helped to focus your power. In the midst of fighting, also, Thor loses his right eye. So, yeah, he's becoming more like Odin as it goes on. And they're fighting, and Thor manages to get a few blows, but it's not helping at all. And he comes to the realization that the only way to stop Hel is to activate the Crown of Surtur by exposing it to the Eternal Flame. The Eternal Flame is in the Asgard Vault, along with the Tesseract and a few other things. And basically, the Eternal Flame enables Hel to raise an army of undead soldiers. She crowns Scourge as her executioner, but later Loki actually returns with a bunch of the slave Korg and Meek and a bunch of the other slaves from Sakaar, and they're taking off, and they basically help save the refugees, for lack of a better term, from Asgard. They get on, and they use the ship, this big ship, to get in get everyone off the Bifrost in time. Banner transforms into the Hulk to take down Fenrir. It's funny, because he tries to transform into the Hulk by jumping out of the airplane and changing into the Hulk, except he doesn't change into the Hulk. He just smacks right down and, like, breaks his arm and dislocates his shoulder and everything. Like, and it takes him a few minutes to transform into the Hulk. And, anyway, Thor realizes like I said, they have to activate the Crown Insertor. Their job was not to prevent Ragnarok, it was to start Ragnarok. And basically, Loki gets into the vault. As he's walking by, he briefly stares at the Tesseract. But he grabs the Crown Insertor, he exposes it to the Eternal Flame. Surtur is revived on Asgard. He takes his Twilight Sword, plunges it into hell, and kills her. Surtur then destroys Asgard as the Asgardians manage to escape. And the movie basically ends with Thor finally taking the throne as the ruler of Asgard and deciding that they have to go to Earth. We then get a mid-credits sequence with Thor... Thor and Loki kind of talking, Loki being a little unsure, like, you sure I'm going to be welcome on Earth? And he's like, I'm sure they'll welcome you. And it's then they suddenly bump into a much larger ship. I think it's meant to be Thanos' ship. I'm guessing Loki probably grabbed the Tesseract, which means he has an Infinity Gem on board. And then, after that, we got a post-credit sequence. We're back on Sakaar. The Grandmaster emerges, and he basically says, well, that was a nice revolution, so, obviously you need someone to revolt against. Anyway, I'm calling it a tie. And that's how the film ends. And, okay, so overall thoughts, like I said, really great rock and roll, fun type film. Obviously, the cast is pretty well spot on across the board. I'd say Valkyrie is probably the weakest. She's just kind of, okay, we need someone in this movie to do some things, and she's the Valkyrie who chickened out during a battle, and she drinks a lot. In fact, when she first shows up to claim Thor. She's getting off her ship, she's walking down the ramp, and because she's drunk, she basically topples off. They tease the idea of a Valkyrie-Thor relationship, but they don't really have any romantic chemistry. I'd say that's probably the weakest part of the film. Everything else, though, is really spot on. The Hulk, Banner, all that interaction is great. Jeff Goldblum as the Grandmaster is hilarious. There's actually this one point because he's like, the ship that Thor is trying to use to escape is not weaponized. It's like, well, he doesn't use this one for battle. He usually uses this for holding orgies. And at one point, Banner's just hitting buttons to try to help them escape. Someone's got to activate a weaponist, and he hits one, and it's a birthday button, basically. It goes, hey! And then a hologram of the Grandmaster spins up and you hear, it's my birthday! It's my birthday! And all these fireworks are being shot out of the ship. And one of them actually strikes a pursuing vessel. Anyway, other performances. Cate Blanchett as Hel. She's good in providing that menace and some of the reasoning behind it. And when you see her attacking Asgard, in fact, there's actually this one scene where there's all these, I'm trying to think what the term is, art murals and artisans in the great throne room. She actually takes her staff and just smashes it, and suddenly it falls down, and you see this whole other artisan, which is the Norse gods basically conquering the 9 realms. Yeah, instead of, it's just Thor and Loki and Odin and the grandeur of Asgard and the peace and serenity that the Asgardians live in. And she immediately says, no, this is not the truth. And that was actually a really cool sequence. Likewise, the sequence where she's using the Eternal Flame to revive the dead is also pretty good. Excuse me, sorry. Idris Elba is Heimdall. Yeah, he's okay. He's just kind of... I hate to say he's just kind of there. It's more like he's the guy who has to stay behind and sort of fill Thor in on what's going on, which they do sort of this remote telepathy type thing. He's all right in this. I think he's been underutilized throughout most of the franchise. Let's see. Korg. Just a sec. Okay, so Korg is the director of the film, Takia Waititi. I'm really winging that pronunciation. He's really funny because he's very sort of like British servitude. Yeah, sorry, the cat's meowing in the background. He's very sort of British servant. He's like, oh, well, how about this and how about this? So, how may I help you? Throughout much of the thing. Carl Urban is Scourge, the executioner, and he's kind of the other one who's just, I think, a little, I just hate to say wasted. I just don't think they utilized him very well. Like, his kind of idea is he wants to be one of the bigger gods. He actually has 2 guns that he purchased in Texas somehow. And he's trying to impress girls because he's the new Heimdall, but he just keeps kind of falling flat on his face. He actually has kind of a heel face turn towards the end where he actually starts saving Asgardians and sacrifices himself. But, yeah, it's a pretty hollow performance. But for the most part, again, this is a great film. Really fun. Great humor throughout, dramatic points where they needed to be dramatic. Obviously, to the lack of Sif, I know there's probably some scheduling conflicts with Jamie Alexander in this, so she couldn't be in the film, and that just seems a little inappropriate, especially given that they kill off the Warriors 3. I mean, they're dead. Like, no one gets revived during this. It's basically Asgard is destroyed, and the Asgardians basically have to move to Earth, and Thor takes the throne. That's it. Other than that, though, yeah, really fun. The mid-credit sequence did kind of confuse me a little bit, too. Anyway, we got a lot of trailers to cover, so I'm just going to sum everything up. I'm giving this one an A. Great fun. You'll have fun. Don't know if you necessarily have to have seen the 2 previous Thor movies. I think they do a good job of keeping the thread up from them. If you weren't going to go see it, go see the film. Okay, so trailer time, and oh boy, we had a load of trailers before this. Now, granted, I saw this at an AMC theater where they play commercials during the beginning up to where the showtime is supposed to start. The actual trailers began, and there were a few trailers on that, but still, even without those ones, there were still oh my goodness, this movie is only about 2 hours and 10 minutes long, I think. I think that was as long as I had checked. It's 130 or 140. It's not that long. It's it's not 2.5 hours, but man, I guess they felt the need to extend it to that because outside of the 2 trailers that were before that, those 2 trailers, by the way, were Godless, a Netflix movie, and Long Road Home, the Nat Geo movie. I guess it's about the war in Iraq. Other than that, we had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trailers. So 10 trailers in all, 8 trailers basically leading into the film proper. Those trailers are The Wonder, starring Owen Wilson and Julia Roberts and Jacob Tremblay, about a kid with a physical deformity and something else. I looked faux inspirational. It's coming out the same week as Justice League. After that, we have Downsizing with Matt Damon, Kristen Wiig, and a few other people. And it's about trying to curb overpopulation by people volunteering to shrink themselves down and live in a smaller world. Just looked really weird. After that, we have Pacific Rim 2. That looks pretty good. I did like Pacific Rim 1. It's been a while since I've seen it, so I probably have to give it a rewatch. After that, we have Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, and this trailer did pretty much outright confirm that this is indeed a sequel to the first Jumanji with Robin Williams and Kirsten Dunst. Excuse me. That it begins with finding the board game. Don't know how exactly it transitions into being a video game, but that's how that happens. After that, we have Maze Runner: The Death Cure. I haven't seen any of the Maze Runner films, so I don't know if I can really speak to that. Then we have Justice League. Then we have Last Jedi. And then finally we got Black Panther. So yeah. Whew. Okay, so next video is actually going to be the next movie review. Hopefully that will be Murder on the Orient Express. And we'll be doing Justice League, obviously. After that, we take a break with movie reviews, and we go until Last Jedi comes out. And I'll maybe do a vlog a little bit on what the future of those might be. Obviously, I'm not giving them up, but there might be some changes coming to that. After that, it's the random trade review on Deadpool versus Hawkeye. Survivor Series isn't until like the end of November, and then it's like another month after that until Clash of Champions. So I'll see you all next time. Hey guys, just a reminder, I am on Patreon now at patreon.com/SleepyTime for Cat Productions. There's a reward tier where you can request for me to review a movie. So if you want to force me to see something like the Emoji Movie, here's your chance.